hello.
Good evening and welcome from me, Ian, Lewis, and our special guest, Sharon. Um, is he there yet? Is he there? Dare I ask? Is he there
Eric, are you here yet?
yet?
He will be. Hey, man never lets me down. Never ever lets me down. Have you remembered the question yet, Eric? I'm just sharing out, guys.
Yeah.
Sharing out.
So anyway, till he's written his request, his question.
Nope.
It's nice to meet you. Nice to say hello, Sharon. Oh, what's he saying? What's he saying? Does he
No,
remember?
he's still not even remembered the question.
You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Sharon, and what your main aims are at the moment, what you're working on, and things like that?
Oh, how much time do you have?
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, well, carry on.
Well, it all began. I grew up in a home in Virginia in the U.S., and it was a Civil War hospital during the war. Actually, both sides used it at various times. A lot of blood stains on the wood floors. And I grew up digging up relics and putting all these artifacts into showcases. And it was a very haunted house at the time. It was considered one of the most haunted houses in America. It was extremely active. It was built atop of a wellspring. The walls were filled with quartz rock. It was just a perfect spirit vessel, I guess you'd say. And as a child, I grew up there since I was a baby. Everything to me was part of nature. There was nothing weird about it. I just thought that's how the world works, that it has other layers and that they interact with us. And I used to observe it as a child and wonder, why is it active this month and it was quiet last month? And so I was sort of becoming an investigator as a child, but it wasn't until I was well into adulthood that I decided it was time for me to sit down and talk to others about, hypotheses and concepts. And so I started my Ghost Hunting Theories blog, and I just sort of took off with investigating. But I've had encounters with Bigfoot. I've had encounters with aliens. Shadow people. I'm a psychic, mostly a psychometrist, but I have skills in pretty much every psychic avenue. So I'm very scientific minded, a classic Virgo. So I'm constantly evaluating and assessing and deciding and working it down until I have no logical or known explanations. And then I get excited because now I know I'm in that sort of other dimensional aspect. And that's where I want to constantly study for repeatability and what might be activating things, and just taking note to see if we could start to manipulate that space and create more encounters. So
can you explain to our guest what psychometry or being a psychometrist is?
Yeah, I have to kind of wonder, since I did grow up digging up relics, it's holding an object, touching something, and knowing about other people who had handled that object. You get a lot of psychic information. I also discovered as I got older that I could do it from photographs. I could watch the news and they could tell about a serial killer, have like a police artist sketch, and all of a sudden I can see through their eyes. No one taught me how to use the skills because they're very unique for each person. I just learned over, trial and error and in learning how I interpret. And always, as a psychic, trying to keep ego and intellect out of it. And I know that's really hard. But say you have a friend who's very wealthy and they hand you an object and you read that object and you're reading somebody very poor, somebody hiding from a bill collector. And intellectually, chances are low that that's true. And your ego wants to give them something accurate. You don't want to ever adjust your reading ever, because what is there is raw. It hasn't gone through the filter of the intellectual level that, writes off everything. So just give it to them. As weird as it sounds, they'll be, whoa, you hit a raw nerve, because you haven't filtered it with wanting to be perfect or, having higher odds. So that's probably my best, thing to tell other psychics. Ego and intellect, park them, be raw, let it just spew. Don't let them react. Don't let them say anything. Turn away from them when you're doing a reading. Let them take what they want, but don't look at their reactions. It'll take you into intellect and ego again.
Yeah. One of the finest people I knew for psychometry, and not a lot of people realised that he was good at it, and that actually was Derek Akora. I've seen him
Oh,
work.
yes.
He's very, very good. Very good. I mean, yeah, we've had a lot of problems with what you were mentioning about ego and things like that. People trying to make a name for themselves and people dissing other people. It caused a lot of problems, and I think that's what led to a lot of his problems. He wasn't an egotistical fella, but we can't go into it any more than that because we might get done.
Right, well, that's it. Right, quickly,
No.
I'm going to go through and say some highs. Hi, Eric. Hi, Rita. Hey, Nettie. Hey, Keith. Eric says that's scary and cool at the same time.
Yeah.
Eric says, is that why I like touching old buildings and antiques? He's asking Sharon.
Yes, we all have the ability, and in a quick teaching lesson, usually the hand that you use to touch something and read information is not the hand you write with. So if you're right-handed, it's more than likely your left hand that needs to touch things, and you'll get feelings, you might get images, you might get memories. It just depends on the kind of intuitive you are. An empath will feel good or bad emotions.
Yeah.
So where's been your favourite place? Do you have a favourite place to go, Sharon, where you like to go to investigate? Well, I know there's so many, but is there any one particular that you're drawn to, that you go back to?
Well, probably the most outstanding one is actually the estate where I grew up, Aspen Grove. In my book, Growing Up with Ghosts, my family made a pact they would haunt it, and so far I'm the last man standing. And people that live around the house now report sightings that are accurate with my family members and where they would be. I'd love to do that, but I know I'm not going to get permission. The family living there now has small children and they don't want to scare them. And I appreciate that. Although the ghosts there actually really like kids, so I'm sure they're getting a lot of activity. My parents had a good attitude. They said soldiers died here and they were away from their families. And here's a family with 5 children. If you hear them walking the halls or you run into them, who better to guard you than a soldier? So we had a good attitude.
More sensitive people are children anyway. I mean, when we first started out as children, being psychic, not knowing what the hell were going off, that's when our most vivid memories come from. My most vivid memory of spirit is when I was 9-year-old, because it was like I'm talking to you guys now. I couldn't see any difference between this little old fella and you lot. It was very, very physical for me. It's only as you get older and you start to filter things out that it gets more difficult to communicate. Well, I feel anyway.
Oh, it's true. When we moved into our home, I was a baby, but my siblings were much older. They knew about ghosts, and they knew that the house they lived in before did not have this stuff. So they were a little more frightened. To me, it was like throwing a ball in the air and it lands. I don't go, well, how to do that? It's just part of the way the universe is. So I had no borders with any of this stuff.
Exactly.
Hey, William. Keith is saying Sharon is extremely gifted as we work together often.
Good.
Yeah.
I've no doubt about that. That's why she's on.
Yeah. Well, growing up, I always felt it was like this really weird thing I should hide, because our estate was like the Munsters house up on the hill, and everyone around us lived in tract houses, and they would just know that this house was always in the news for the ghosts. And so I was always going to be different. I was like Marilyn Munster. I just didn't quite fit in. And I was so ashamed of I hid my skills until I got older and more confident.
That's exactly the way that, well, I remember things. I think it's same for Ian as well.
I pretty much blocked mine out for a while. So
yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Sarah Louise. But yeah, it's just one of those things. I mean, suppose we live in a different world now where paranormal's more open and more spoke about. Whilst back in the day, if you even spoke about such things or spoke about seeing stuff, you were classed as being mental. But nowadays,
I thought I was cracking up. I really did. And I didn't speak about it for ages. I used to go to my mother, and she didn't help matters because I'd mentioned to my mother, I've seen this and I've seen that. And she'd just tell me to shut up. Shut up, you barn pot. You're imagining it. I'm not imagining it. And it weren't until years and years later she decided to tell me. I says, look, mother, it's not gone away. If anything, I'm more connected to it because it's not scaring me anymore like it did as a kid. I says, where do I get it from? She said, that'd be your great-great-grandmother. I says, oh, fantastic. Why didn't you tell me this when I was growing up? Thinking I was sick. She says, well, they used to come from America and all over for the tea leaves and the palms reading and the crystal ball. I says, thank you. It's all making sense now.
hey Kate, how you doing?
You mean,
But it's I mean, nowadays it's more spoke about and everybody's doing podcasts these days. In fact, I've actually noticed a difference of more people pulling away from investigations and starting more podcasts. You see it all the time. A lot of people are doing it, and I think it's going to become a bigger and bigger thing.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I had an encounter with a Bigfoot in 1985, and I never spoke of it because it was just not talked about. This was before the internet. Nowadays, you know, of course, there's lots of shows about Bigfoot. People openly admit their sightings. There's, I think, different levels of what you're willing to say. I don't like to say I'm psychic because then people want readings. They get dependent on me. And honestly, I'll tell you, there's no way I can get them out of my head because once I've read someone, there's an open line I can't close and I can still keep reading them. And I don't want their life in my head. So I don't want to do readings, but I would do lost people and things like that. But there's some subjects I have only just begun to talk about, like encounters with aliens. And that's one that's very hard for people to handle. It was hard for me to handle. I was like, let's just make it go away, but it just kept coming back. And so now I realize that I have an obligation to not take things off the table. They all need to be out there, talked about, because somewhere there's someone else that had something similar and they just need to know they're sane.
Yeah. And I can tell you exactly what it is, and that's abduction.
See, mine is I'm a contactee. Yeah, I'm basically a dump for information, zip files and info about the world, the universe, and where we're going, and what I need to do personally. I've never been abducted, but I was told as a young child that they had done things that made me different than others, and golly, they sure did. But they said I wouldn't use those skills till later after I went through a lot of trials. And I went through a lot of trials to really start using it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people, even when we're talking about paranormal, when we come on to the subject to aliens and abductions, there's a lot of people out there who still is a wee bit backwards to come forwards, but there was an interesting case that I watched, and it was about a gentleman in America, and he was in the Navy, and he was getting deported to this place, and he had to stay there for 9 o'clock. And his account was that he was there for 9 o'clock and no one showed up. And apparently he'd been missing for something like 2 days. But he was adamant, I was there. I was waiting for you. And it wasn't until he actually went on holiday and he seen a book, and was it Bob Lazar? It was either Bob Lazar or Bob Hopkins. It was either one who had wrote a book. And when he read this book, he went, "Oh my God, this is exactly what happened to me." And he got in touch, and they discovered it was missing time.
Yes.
And usually victims, or can we call them victims? Usually, what word can we use? it's not victim. Well, it is to some people actually. They do feel like victims. So yeah, we'll say
Hey,
victims for you.
Hostages, yeah, really.
They tend to suffer deja vu for a long, long time afterwards because
They don't know why they're reacting to things, and it's something is getting, PTSD. They're remembering something. And I do know that there is a way for them to basically give you amnesia, kind of like when you go under for surgery, they give you an amnesic. It's something that works on some and doesn't work on others. And I know from what I've been informed, I can't be paralyzed and I can't lose my memory. So they know to try to work around me while I'm sleeping, because then I'm not going to get up, move around. Because unfortunately, I actually tried to touch one time, and that didn't go well. So they felt, I could feel their tension. I could feel their panic because, oh no, she's awake and she's moving around. She's sitting up. She's thinking about standing up. And I actually didn't stand up because I thought I would intimidate them. I'm a tall female, and they're so delicate that I just felt like, no, I'll just see what they need. What do you want? I like the encounters, but that's not what abductees have. I just know they're going to give me a zip file, and by sometime the next day, I'll be able to open all that information and know it. And the mind speak is extremely like psychic. Psychic, you can get images, feelings. You get someone's memories sort of in your mind. It's not in words necessarily, unless you're a clairaudient. It's just you have to interpret it and put it to human words. So that's what they do. They give me a zip file, and then just slowly I begin to translate what they're trying to show me and tell me.
And therein lies the problem. And I think that's why the alien side of paranormal is still quite taboo, because the people, the mouthpieces for that side of things in our society are still quite, let's say, unbelievable, because the characters, and they're not necessarily characters that are very articulate.
Well, yeah, it's the same sensationalism you see in ghost hunting, and basically the people that think they're constantly being possessed or everything's a demon. You just have to sort through all the BS and get to what's really happening. What's the real threat? It was a noise. It was a shadow. That's not going to hurt you. If it could hurt you, it'd be like the ending of Ghostbusters. Total chaos.
Well, even with all this technology available, no one is getting any concrete evidence.
Yes.
Hi, Nicola, how you doing? That is so true. And I don't even think in my son's generation or the generation after that, it's going to be forever ongoing. The same as cryptids, the same as aliens. It's all going to be forever. It doesn't matter how much America comes out and says that big Congress meeting. I think there's a lot more to come out. I think there is a lot more to come out. But it's not forever going to be in any time your generations.
Yeah, what I was shown basically was that they were slowly we're coming to a time where they're going to have us encounter these things more and more and more to see how humanity reacts. What they showed me was in man's earliest years, they openly interacted with all of these realms, all of these beings, and it was just the natural world to them. So I think when we refer to a lot of carvings, and archaeologists tell us, oh, it was spiritual. No, that was to them on their plane. It was in their realm. They were encountering these things. That door was sort of closed just as an experiment. What would we do if we think this is all there is? Will we create a God? Will we be able to discern when these things do kind of sneak in now and then? Now that it's happening a lot, they're watching us. If we don't handle it well, what I was shown was the door would close. And if the door closed completely, there wouldn't be a heaven either. We wouldn't go anywhere. And that was a terrifying thought. So a lot of my mission right now is to get people to kind of look at things objectively. What is your real threat? What is really happening here? I know we get scared of UFOs and aliens, but honestly, they would have taken us over long ago if they wanted us. They're just peering into a snow globe and looking at this little world, kind of observing their experiment.
They probably
Yeah.
look at humanity and say, screw this, can we go on to the next section? Keith says, I know exactly what the downloading of info feels like. I had that from a large male Bigfoot. Oh, wow. And Eric says exactly, Sharon. I mean, Bigfoots as well. Cryptids is not really my thing. Don't get me wrong, I love when Viv and Dan and everybody starts talking about Bigfoot and that, because obviously I love hearing stories about Bigfoot and that. They'll joke with me because that I'm a size 10 and a half, so that makes me Bigfoot. But like when it comes to like, that side of things, I'm not really read up on, but I've heard quite a good few stories.
Yeah, I was brought into like a very serious research group of Bigfoot over a decade ago, and one of the things I was put in place for language, symbolism, and psychic skills, because I'm all communications. But what happened was there was a big rush of people wanting to kill a Bigfoot to prove them. And I thought, well, this is ridiculous. That's not how you're going to prove them. There's other ways you can prove Bigfoot. And I thought, well, Bigfoot has to have ancestors. I mean, there has to be a lineage they came from, right? Then I started looking into America and our ancient mounds where we've discovered giant bones. Okay, so now we have a possibility. But then I looked around the globe, and everywhere there's a Bigfoot equivalent, there were Denisovans, an ancient people that were very big. We go to Siberia and Russia, we get the Alma and the Almasty. Those are their Bigfoot. We go to China, we see Yeren. We go to the Himalayas, we see Yeti. We go to Australia, we have Yowie. We go to America, we have Bigfoot. But if you look at the populations, the native populations, they have a little bit of Denisovans DNA in them in these locations. In America, we have it in Peru, and with our Inuits up in Alaska, they have a little bit of Denisovans DNA. When you look at the Tibetan, the Sherpa, they have Denisovans DNA, which allows them to have thinner blood for high elevations. Yeah. And what we're looking at is something that's built literally to shimmy up mountains. And they really can go quickly up mountains. They have long bodies, they have shorter legs, very powerful glutes, very powerful leg muscles, very long arms. They're totally built to climb up and down. They have large eyes that are meant for low light, like Neanderthal had. We're just seeing an interesting coincidence that wherever there's a Bigfoot, the native population has some Denisovans DNA. So we may be dealing with just simply an ancient man still existing.
Yes, totally agree. 100% well said.
Thanks.
Eric says, "Here, our Scottish Bigfoot low. Always, brother, always." William says, "I get fed up. This Bigfoot. I was a size 9 at school. I'm a bigger foot than you, William."
Hey, I used to be a model, so my feet are big too. I get it. I'm a tall girl.
Oh, how tall are you, Sharon? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm 5'8", which I don't know how it works out in your logistics, but
yeah, I'm about the same height. Yeah. But definitely no. But the Bigfoot, as I said, listening to other people, and I know Viv and Dan had but it was one of the programs, one of the famous programs over in America, dealing with Bigfoot. They had on one night, and it was really, really good to obviously listen to the guys as well.
Alaskan Bigfoot.
Aye, the Alaskan Bigfoot. Aye, that's who they had on.
Yeah, you find in the more remote areas like Alaska and the Sierras in California, they're very not used to humans. They don't deal with us well at all. But you go down to, say, East Texas, where they're in with a population all around them of humans. They're opportunists. They know how to use dumpsters for food. They know where, they know roadways. They know what cars are going back and forth. They have habituation sites where somebody might be living in a rural area on a farm, and they're living with Bigfoot on the property. They know there's a clan of Bigfoot. Bigfoot knows there's a family there. And I've built some guidelines for how to live beside a Bigfoot clan where it's respectful, and that on your property you always have a safe room they can go to. So if they feel unsafe or there's somebody new on the property visiting, they can go there knowing that your family never goes to that part of the property. And they'll stay there if they know there's a safe area.
Wow.
It's interesting. It's
Yeah.
interesting. We don't experience that. Not here. So,
Oh, y'all have the big cats.
Yeah,
I like that. That's neat.
yeah, we've got lichens as well. Got quite a traditional lichens.
What's your thoughts, Sharon, on Skinwalker Ranch?
Oh, I would go nuts there. I do psychic tracking. Got me into trouble one time. I was tracking 2 sentinel Bigfoots that are basically guards that go around the perimeter and be sure no one's coming and warn the clan. But I was following the elder and tracking him, and I got within maybe, 100 yards from him. And all of a sudden I couldn't walk. My legs wouldn't move. I couldn't remember how to walk. My mind wanted to go to him, but my legs couldn't do anything at all. It was like being locked in your body. And it took another researcher calling my name for me to be able to turn, talk to him, and then I could walk to him. But then all of a sudden I started vomiting violently and blacking out and coming to, and he literally had to drive me all the way an hour away to get away from that area before I just suddenly, all of it went away. So I don't know what was done. I don't know if it was infrasound or if it was on a psychic level, because I was tracking him and I got a lot of info, and I don't think they like mind read. They don't want somebody poking into their business.
Yeah, I don't think you're actually the first one to say that. I actually, and you guys can quote me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure on Skinwalker Ranch, one of the guys had to leave because was it noise radiation level?
There's two accounts where they had swellings in their head.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, Skinwalker Ranch really intrigues me, and I know some other locations that are very similar. They have the same sort of qualities, and kind of working on a concept. They've been looking at some of the ancient sites like Stonehenge and other sites around the world, and when you start linking them up through the globe, you come up with the tesseract, which is basically the shape of the fifth dimension. That's tells me that there are another dimension, are totally overlapping. So Earth is within basically a tesseract. And so the fifth dimension's here working with us. And I think it's at certain points that we're actually able to witness, and that might be why we put sites in those locations. But we can witness that little moment where there's an intersect.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ley lines, we call them.
Like ley lines. Now, ley lines are Earth oriented, and this would be a dimensionally oriented intersection, a convergence. Yeah.
Keith says, I work with the clan and go. We always respect them and their land. I can believe that, Keith, definitely.
Just imagine if somebody went camping or hunting or riding an ATC through your living room, and yet they still are quiet and they still won't confront you, even though they could kill you with a SWAT. They're so strong. And it says a lot about them that they really don't want to be found. And I think that's an encounter with the fact that we bred so much that we took over the population, and they know not to let us know they're there under any circumstance, or their kind will be gone. They'll be obliterated, because in the past they were killed and driven off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating field. It's not something that I personally have gone into much, and I think that's got something to do with where we live, really.
Yeah.
My neck of wood, it's literally steeped in folklore. So we don't have the areas for Bigfoot or Sasquatch or whatever name we've got for him here. But yeah,
y'all have the ghosts, though. You have screaming ghosts and women in white, and it's lovely. That's just such a joy. We have that in parts of the older parts of America, but not anything like y'all do. You have layer upon layer upon layer of history and cobblestone streets that have been there for 1,000 years. I mean, I just think about it psychically, and I'm like, wow, all this. There was a British movie, The Stone Tapes. I don't know if y'all saw it, but it was brilliant about rocks recording history and events.
Yeah, I've got an abbey very close to me as well that does the same. You put your ear to pillar, and you can hear chanting.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Keith said, I had dizziness and felt very ill for an hour. They requested me to come with them. That must have been really scary for you, Keith. But yeah.
Most people that are struck with infrasound, they either get migraines or they vomit or they lose their time. They wander around. They don't know where they went.
Yeah.
But it always lasts about an hour, and then it seems to work out. One of the things I tell people when they say that, no, there's no infrasound, there's a human who makes infrasound, and the doctors say it's because his vocal cords are so long. Now, you get somebody that's 8 foot tall, of course they can make infrasound. And it's a wonderful way to sort of nudge people and make them uncomfortable so they leave the area. You don't know why you don't want to go down that path, or you start to feel kind of ill. It's just a way to protect their family. And it's a tool for them to communicate long distances, which is critical. So elephants have infrasound because they can cover, huge distances. And if you're in mountainous areas, that's probably your best form of communication.
Yeah, whales do it as well. And there's a primate in New Guinea that's well known, and it's been studied more than I think anything else really, other than whales. And that's a primate called the eye. It's got a very elongated middle finger that it uses to feed with. But we've recently found out that the reason why it has such an effect on the human population is it emits these infrasounds, and it's been mesmerizing to the local population, and they leave them alone. They leave them alone. So it's grown up in folklore again in Guinea. So
you have to wonder about the effects too. There's a prison in Philadelphia. It's called the Eastern State Penitentiary, and when they were studying it, they realized that because it has a central circle and all of the prison cells are in spoke-like formations, when it rains and the rain hits the roof, it sends infrasound down where the cells are. And that's causing people to see shadow people or think they're being watched and get paranoid. It has a huge effect. And if you go onto YouTube and you type in infrasound water experiment, when they put infrasound on water coming out of a hose, it goes into a perfect spiral.
Yeah.
Now imagine
imagine
if you get hit by that, and especially your pineal gland that floats in cerebrospinal fluid, imagine what that does to the gland that's basically part of your whole dream state. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Well, do you know?
It was used as torture in Second World War. Chinese water torture.
It works. I mean, if somebody drives down the road with their bass playing in their car and you can feel your chest thumps, it makes me violent. Like I want to go out there and tear them out of the car. It's very, very primordial. The Viking in me gets going.
Do you know, funny enough, because I do another podcast on a Thursday night, and funny enough, we actually covered, I don't know if you've heard of the case of Kenny Beach.
Yes, the M Cave.
Yeah, the M Cave, I covered that because I found that really all interesting. And I was speaking to one of the Dark Mirror boys, Mark, and I was asking his opinion of what he thought about it. And he had obviously, he'd said to me was obviously about infrasound and how dangerous it can be. It could either make you incontinent or just make you so ill. And one of the people that's been looking for Kenny Beach, I don't know if he still goes out every day, but I know at the beginning he did go out every day looking for Kenny Beach, and he encountered what he thought was the M Cave, and he said he felt so violently ill and he was so sick, but the further that he was getting away from where he was, the better he actually felt. And I thought, that's actually quite scary to think there is such a thing like infrasound that can cause either mental or physical effects.
Well, look at the Havana syndrome. That's what microwaves. They're tossing microwaves at people, and it's making them really sick. So, yeah, I mean, it's another weapon basically. But for primitive people who maybe live in the caverns, that's their protection.
Yeah, there's a film. There's a sci-fi film based on infrasound. Now, we know it now But back in the day, nobody would have connected it as a film to infrasound. But it's literally, that's what it is, and that's Quatermass and the Piss.
Oh, that's my favorite. Quatermass. I love that. It was so ahead of its time. When she's seeing the vision of the other planet and the locust things running around, I thought, wow, it is so ahead of its time. It was brilliant. Yeah, that's a classic.
Eric says one of the reasons why I'm moving to UK. William says I wouldn't move over here. Our government are corrupt. Eric says ours are more so. And Eric thinks you think. They two are having a conversation about the government being corrupt.
Yeah.
They all
no one that isn't.
Well, exactly.
It's a cascading effect around the world.
At the moment about, I saw a post this morning. Oh my God! It's a subsidiary from the government. Another way to waste money, really. And they were coming. This bloke were coming out with all the reasons why we should embrace these illegal immigrants and give them all the rights that a citizen's got. In fact, more rights. Just because they trundle up to an office and say, I've been abused, I'm being trafficked. Let me into your country and give me all that I want. No.
Right, I'm going to kind of steer away from this subject because this is one of these subjects where everybody goes absolute wild on. So I'm going to try and steer away from that subject at all, because it's one of those ones that will cause an outcry. But definitely, I mean, your encounters. Honestly, I'm memorised. I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm honestly memorised by your encounters. I always like to listen to everybody's stories and that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you with the ghost stuff right now, we're kicking our team back up again. One of our team members died of cancer, and we took a break from it, and we all kind of regrouped. When one of the team members' fiance was willing to start again, and what we really wanted to do was switch off. We're not going to be going house calls. We're not doing that. It's something that you can only go in, do it for a night, leave. It's not going to. There's no repeatability. There's no accountability. There's no controls. So we decided what we really wanted to do, which is what I love to do, is create experiments in which we can keep trying the experiment over and over, and then look for if there's a high probability that we hit something. And then by hitting that, we understand a little bit more how we're communicating. And so we have a few EVP experiments we're going to try. As a psychic, I took team members into a hotel that had a very haunted room. I went into the room alone, and as a psychic, I took a little map of the room and I put an X everywhere there was energy. I folded it up, I put it in my pocket, I went out, I sent a member in with divining rods. That person went through the room, found all the crossovers, put them on the map with an X, folded it up, put it in their pocket. The next team member came in. When we were done, we all opened up the maps, and they all exactly lined up. Brilliant. And what I wanted to know was, if I send people in who they haven't exercised the psychic aspect, they can still find energy points and active areas by using crossover. So, and I want to do an EVP experiment. Yeah. We're going to utilize divining rods for an experiment.
Yeah, I don't think they'll find them all, but I think they'll find some of them. And that overlaps a little bit of what me and Ian's been talking about, and it's based on frequencies. Again,
yes. It's definitely something different. That's how I'm picking up the energy, and I don't even know. It's very synesthetic. It's hard to apply that to a regular understanding of the senses and how they all align. And I tell people, if you think you have psychic skills, there's a good site. It's the IONS Institute online, and it's GOTPSI, which is GOTPSI.org. And you can test your skills there. And what I say is just keep testing, because every time you have a correct hit, your mind and body did some kind of sync. And once you recognize that sync, now when you go think you have a reading, you'll know, did I have that sync? Yeah, I probably had an accurate reading. It's really training yourself. It's not like psychic just spills out of every pore and it's always accurate. That would be the intellectual ego issue. Sometimes you're totally off, and it can be something just drifting through that distracted you, or you're just physically not there today or mentally not there today. So you can't beat yourself up for having bad psychic days, but you can learn how you feel when you make a hit. So the EVP experiment we're going to do crossing, we always put at least 2 recorders in each room, because we could be in the kitchen asking a question and the bedroom will have a recorder that has an answer. It's never necessarily right there. So we put a couple recorders in each room. I'm going to put 1 recorder where there is a crossover with divining rods, and then the other 2 where they don't cross. And then just see, is there some pattern? Are we only picking things up on the crossover recorder? These are the things we need to know. I have an experiment for silent EVP where we all sit together with written questions. Somebody says go, and for 30 seconds, we read and concentrate on the first question. And then they'll say next, and we start thinking and focusing on the second question. Do we really have to have sine waves? Do we have to have sound in order to communicate? All of this is done, through mind speak. So
Yeah, I've done something similar, but with drawings.
There you go. Very good. Yeah. Use a Faraday bag to put your recorder in. I mean, you really shouldn't be picking up stray signals that way. Bury it in the ground. Just try all kinds of different things and keep doing it. Don't let one time tell you that it's a success. It could have been a fluke. So
yeah, that's where the aluminium helmet comes from. With later equipment, aren't it? I mean, these things used to be laughed at, but there's actually a little bit of sense in it.
Yeah, we don't ask questions of like aspirin. Aspirin comes; it's a natural thing from a tree, and it works, and they've used it for thousands of years. We don't think that's like hoo-hoo, So we really have to think. Sometimes things are really simple explanations or simple sources.
Yeah. I think we've forgotten a lot as well. As you were mentioning about ancients, we've forgotten a hell of a lot of things. And it's borne out, even today's society. I mean, you ask a kid today where a burger comes from, they'll say McDonald's. No, but where does it come from? A cow. What? What?
I'm Viking lineage, so I'm thinking, wow, I want to know how we made those swords. Come on.
Yeah. Irene says we're in tenors, and she's never tested her abilities, and Eric is enjoying the show.
Good.
But yeah, nowadays with technology, I think everything's lost in technology now. Social media, the full shebang. Don't get me wrong, I can't really say that I regret having social media, because if it wasn't for social media, I wouldn't be talking to the likes of yourself, Sharon. I wouldn't have met Bri, wouldn't have met Ian, wouldn't have met most of the people that I've met in the paranormal world if it wasn't for obviously technology and social media. But sometimes it could be the biggest curse.
Yeah, social media, if you use it right, it's a tool. If you use it wrong, it's an escape. So that's something everybody has to be accountable for. I can't tell you. I was at a resort recently. I was in the pool swimming around. Yeah, we do that in Arizona in the winter. And I'm swimming and I'm looking over, and there's all these people sitting on the steps reading their cell phone. They're not even looking up. There's palm trees. There's blue sky. There's waterfall. They're missing life. And I say this often about when you're out there looking for ghosts, you're investigating, go naked. Don't bring equipment. Don't, because our cameras, our recorders, everything we try to throw at it, any device that lights up or says words telling us there's a ghost there, they're inaccurate. They're inadequate. You have to have a human who has a soul to actually pick these things up. How many times have we been out there and we hear something? We didn't have a recorder with us. No one believes us. We have no proof, but we heard it. But I'll tell you, that recorder probably did not pick it up. We're different than instruments. And so you shouldn't be walking around looking down at your instrument to tell you there's a ghost there. Learn how to feel it. Learn how to sense it. You're going to miss so much.
You've just made me think about a possible new piece of equipment.
Oh,
Do you remember back in the 90s, they brought out a little popsicle with a plastic gadget on the end. And when you put the popsicle in your mouth, you could hear music.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that
Ooh.
little gadget could be, that little gadget could be enhanced some way to record what you're hearing.
Well,
Do
even more interestingly, I'm wondering if you could train yourself to get it to send your thoughts vocally. If you
Yeah.
can hear your voice in your head saying something enough, will it finally start to come out? Can you imagine the skill set you'd have if you could do that?
Yeah, well, Stephen Hawking had something similar, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's a very similar experiment I did with Brian J. Cano. Was he had you all in a room, and he said, right, we want to think of a word. And he said, I want you to sit there for a minute and think of that word. And he put the recorder on. And when we played it back, I think we got it on there 10 times, this word. And over, I think it was 60 times he'd done it. He got 47 results.
See, and I think there's a lot to be said for that. The collective, when you get enough people together on the same focus, it's kind of like you go into church. Yeah, it's pretty, but physically you feel something because a lot of people felt the same thing there. They were all concentrating on the same thing. If I go to a memorial of Abraham Lincoln, it hits you in the gut immediately because everyone goes there, and then the weight and importance of what he did, everyone's thinking the same thing there.
Is that the term mass hysteria?
Yeah, we leave imprints everywhere. I like to use this example. My sister haunted our house when she was alive. And how she did that was when she was a teenager. She was the middle child, rebellious hippie. And Mom would find her pot supply, maybe because I told her where it was. And because my sister told on me, I kissed a boy in school. So my sister, she narked on me, I narked on her. So Mom would lock her in her room and flush the pot down the toilet. And she would lock her in the room. And my sister was a singer. She was like a Stevie Nicks, like that goat sounding voice. And she would pound on the walls and yodel and yodel and yodel. And this happened frequently growing up. And after she got married and moved out, every now and then I'd be upstairs. I was the last kid at home. I'd hear it going on in the room, and I'd run down the hall. I'd open the door. She's not in there, but it was the same loudness, the same rhythm, the same weird sounds. So she was haunting it even then. And a strong emotion can do that. And that's probably why hospitals and prisons, murder sites, it locks something in like a little tag, and that tag can be replayed.
This is why a lot of people like to go and do asylums, because it's long been a belief of mine that anybody that's not got control of the wits, they're the same in death, and they won't have any qualms of trying to possess you and being mischievous. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. I think as a psychometrist, I would just say that energy is still there, not that person. Every soul, I believe every soul definitely makes the transition. They're not hanging around here. They're not lingering. I do think they can have interactions now and then with us, but it's certainly not something where they don't know they're dead or they're stuck in a location. My concept of the heaven experience is really just another dimension. Like a photograph's a two-dimensional image of you, and you're 3D. We only jumped one dimension from the photograph to you, and now we have depth, biology, intelligence, spirituality, movement, all these things, front, back, sides, everything. And that was only one dimension, but that photo's a facsimile, a 2D facsimile of us. We're a 3D facsimile of what we are, the next realm. And near-death experiences kind of show us, when they talk about having a 360 view, they can see all. They don't have a body. They can think of a place and be there right then in a quantum way. They can be everywhere. It's only one more, leap, but it's a lot more depth. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I heard somebody actually mention this quite a few years ago now. and it was a little bit ridiculed, but it's become more or less accepted, but it's not spoke about enough, I don't think. And that is the Jesus theory, the God theory. How can he be everywhere? Well, you've just explained it.
Yes. And it's interesting. When I was 16, my father died on our kitchen floor. He had a heart attack, and the paramedics were trying to bring him back, but he was dead. And so we're all grieving that we lost my dad. About 4 minutes later, they managed to bring him back with the paddles. And as they were rolling him out of the house, my dad gestured, and I leaned over, and my dad his face looked like he was 15 years old. He was smiling like a child. He was so happy, more peaceful than I'd ever seen. And he said, I was at a fjord. I was with my Tante Valberg and my mama and my papa. And those are all of his family from Norway. And he said, there's colors that don't exist here. There's flowers that don't exist here. And then they started to roll him out to the ambulance, and he stopped them one more time. And he gestured, and I leaned over, and he gestured again. And I leaned closer, and he said, that's the real world. This one's fake.
Yeah.
Well, he died a few days later in the hospital. And we had come home to celebrate that he was doing better. And I thought that maybe they'll let him out of the hospital. So I go to bed, and I wake up, somebody's tugging on my big toe. And I look, and there's my dad's silhouette. My dad had this big pot belly, easy to tell, bald head. He's pulling on my big toe, and I'm thinking, wow, they let him out of the hospital. And the phone rings, and I turn to reach for the phone. It's the hospital saying he had passed away. And I look back, and he's not there. What was so significant about that was I was the last child. I was 16 at the time, and he was very close to me. And he followed me through my modeling, dance, flag twirling, acting, everything I did. He thought I was the greatest. And when I was growing up, he traveled the world. He was one of the world leaders in alcohol recovery. He put programs in every government all around the world. And he was always gone. So when I was growing up, I wanted to know, did the plane land okay? Are you all right? Because he had a lot of close calls on flights. And my mom would always say, she has to go to school in the morning. Don't wake her up. So he'd come in my room and tug on my big toe to let me know he made it home. So that was pretty poignant. At that very moment, my brother across country, 2,000 miles away, saw my dad at the exact same time. So you don't have a body. You don't have to be in one place. They're not invisible people. They're energy. It's so different than we understand.
I'm just going to jump in with some of these comments. Irene says, kids don't know where milk comes from. Eric says, I can make the... Irene says, I've argued with paranormal investigators because they rely too much on equipment. Nicola says, brilliant chat tonight. Thank you, Sharon. Irene says, mums are too busy on their phones instead of watching their kids. I can't tell you if I hear a spirit because I know the basics, name, age, sex, and facial features, but I can't show you what I see. William says, I use crystal, water, fire, air, and earth to visualise stuff. Works for me. Never have to go looking for the paranormal. Irene says, residual energy, but I have been on the USS Lexington, and I know the sailors are still there because I see them on their bunk beds, and they haven't left the aircraft carrier. Irene says, my mum smiled at me in her casket, and yeah, I know that no one saw that but me and my husband, and we freaked out. It's all personal experiences.
But I can explain a little bit because it's a bit contrary to what Sharon's just been saying, but I can explain that as residual hauntings. There's a lot of residual hauntings, and this is just, it's not real energy. It's like watching somebody play.
Yeah, recording.
Yeah. It's a certain moment. Like if you have a memory, just the other day I was thinking about this. A song came on the radio, and I knew exactly where I was at one moment in my life when it was playing, exactly what I was doing. I could remember what it smelled like, how it felt. Somehow at that moment, I'd heard that song a million times, but at that moment I locked it in, I tagged it. And the house I grew up in, that estate, both in the house and on the property, there were a lot of residual. Most of that was residual. It was a repetitive figures. They don't see me. They don't know I'm there. But it's like then this is maybe where the quantum comes into this. There's a crossover where for a moment you catch a glimpse of something that happened in what we consider another time period. But
Yeah.
time is questionable. I don't see time as anything but a way to measure attrition. But in general, it's all there. Everything, it's like the Akashic Records, everything that is, has, and will be is simultaneous. It's quantum, like quantum entanglement. And
Yeah.
that's how psychics work too. And that took me forever to figure out why do I know things, or why do I know this person across country is about to call me? They're thinking about me, but I feel that they're thinking about me, and it's at the same moment. It's that quantum entanglement is that gets me excited because it explains, things moving in a spooky way, like Einstein said.
Yeah. It gets me. There's one thing I've been thinking about for quite some time now, and that is how to sort of filter the paranormal world out a little bit and categorize it, because it needs it. I think it needs it. How could you have a test to check if somebody's genuine, if somebody's a psychic or not? Because anybody can say, I'm psychic.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's kind of why you test, too. It is a skill you have to work at. Honestly, as a psychometrist, I could not. It's hard for people to understand this. I didn't know other people couldn't read objects. As a child, I would dig something up. I would rush it to my mom and say, he was in the Civil War and they had a battle here. They built a fort here on the property. And this guy was a reporter and he's from New York and he had 2 kids and this is his name. I had all this info and my mom would just hold the object and go, here, clean it off and put it in the showcase, because mom was a historian. And I would look at her like, didn't you get this? Didn't you read this guy? Didn't you see Fitzgerald? Like, I know. But as an adult, what I did was I went back, now that we have the internet, and I was able to look at records, and I was completely accurate. Yes, he was there. He was a reporter. He was from New York. He did have 2 children. So that gave me relief to know that I could actually verify what was happening there. But imagine being able to touch objects and you get more than just weight, texture, size, temperature. You get knowledge. So I could go into a store, or I could turn a doorknob, or I could sit on a toilet seat that someone else sat on. So as a child, I just learned to I literally, my focus is not there. But if somebody hands me a piece of jewelry and says, read this, then I open it up. I couldn't function. I couldn't function in the world. I'd be a mess. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And I think that's what you've got to be careful as well, when you are obviously dealing with everybody's emotions. You're having spirits coming at the same time, then you've got a load of questions people are asking, and then it just must be like top, up by top.
Yeah. Well, you see a lot of psychics on TV get very dramatic. They suddenly feel like they're the victim and they're getting stabbed. And that's not me. I'm an archivist. I always know I'm a witness. I never enter it emotionally. I'm here just to see it, to record it, to put it into the books. I don't become it. I'm not part of it. I keep myself very separate. When I read serial killers, who are extremely easy to read, by the way, it's very clinical. I can see the weird patterns of why they do, what they're thinking, what they want to do next, what they've done. But I'm never engulfed by it. I'm never crying, screaming, trembling, or afraid. I also have predictive dreams about airplane crashes and tsunamis and things, and I'm there to witness them. So I'm on the plane. I've gone down on a plane dozens of times. I know all the way planes go down, but I always know I'm a witness, and no one can see me or hear me. I'm just sitting there, unable to tell people ahead of time what flight it is or to be careful. I can't do anything. It's already in the books. I can just watch it. And I don't like to fly because I do know what it's like for the people on the plane who will die in that crash. So I try to avoid flying if I can, because I know
it's almost like Final Destination.
Yeah.
That basically.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I know I can't be killed. I know I'm there to watch. Some have been intriguing. There was an Ethiopian hijacking that the plane went down right offshore, and it was actually kind of entertaining because the way people were handling it. and just the view as we're going into the water, and the hijackers, they were speaking of doing, but their interaction with the passengers was what was unusual. It was almost like they were in a marketplace bargaining a price, and I was like,
I shouldn't
going
laugh.
down.
I'm not laughing, but it's just like one
see
of
the
these
ocean, the ocean's right there.
Wow.
You know?
No. It's even as daft as what people. Me and Nick have spoke about this on many time in the show about people who see a tsunami coming at them. Now you can see this wave coming at them, and they're standing like this with the phone. Like, what the hell? You should be running.
I made fun
And
of
it's
this
like-
the other day, but I
Oh,
used to live in
oh.
California. In California, we would get tsunami warnings, and sometimes they were very serious ones. But you turn on the news, and the reporters are on the beach with all the people that have 6 packs of beer waiting for the tsunami to come. And I said to myself, yeah, that's how they voted for Newsom as their governor. This is how California does things. Yeah. I know.
It's crazy. Irene says some spirits are still lingering, and I know because I do murderers and they can't move forward, and I do help them cross over, but I know their killers hold them hostage. And when I do cross them and over, the abductees get very angry. Cliff says we have 100 hours of EVP recordings. I found changing the frequency playback. I was able to hear voices that the team did not hear on the night. Irene says, you're lucky. I feel every stabbing and I get hit in the head and punched in the gut. It's no nice thing, Irene. That's why I don't go outside anymore. If I do, I never go outside alone.
Yeah, that's a hard
Um,
thing. I know empaths have a lot of trouble keeping the emotional aspects. They
Yeah.
link up with sympathy instead of empathy, and it's hard to get out of that because now you've become that person. As a psychic my entire life, I can tell you, I can get information. I know how to get information, and I don't become it. Because I know I'm psychic, I know I wasn't really that person. I didn't really go through that. But I also know that for some reason the universe needs me to witness this and understand it. And it's just part of a weird, I guess, God-given skill set that I need to use. And I think I always say this. I mean, if anyone gives you a gift and you put it in a closet and you don't use it, that's pretty disrespectful. And I think to honor that person and what they gave you, it should be showcased. So I'm not afraid to use the skills now, but I also know how to not become those things. And for an empath to try to do readings of victims is a dangerous practice.
Yeah.
Right. 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So sorry, that's my young son. But no, I just want to thank you. It's been a really, really interesting show, Sharon. Thank you for your
Thank you.
obviously your time out today. And thank you, Bri, for obviously bringing us tonight's guest.
It has to be.
It's been really, really good, and we definitely, Sharon, need to get you on without a shadow of doubt again.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, y'all are wonderful to talk to. I mean, sometimes I get people that know nothing about paranormal, and y'all are so brilliant about it. So that's such a relief.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you very
It's
much.
nice to hear it from another aspect as well. So
Yeah. Oh,
Absolutely.
definitely. And everybody's enjoyed the show, by the looks of it. Sarah Louise, Irene. But I just want to say thank you very much. So next week we are talking about, in fact, Bri can say it because Bri can pronounce the word better than I can.
So I can't remember what we're doing. Well,
Pareidolia. Is it Pareidolia?
Paradolia.
Aye, that.
Yeah.
Hello, Terry Two Willies. So we're doing that one. So it'll be an interesting one, definitely. To do, guys. So tune in next week for that. Sharon, before we go, would you like to tell people where they might find your blogs, or
Oh, yes.
if you've got a group or a page?
Yeah, my blog is one of the top paranormal blogs. It's #1 in the world for ghost investigating. It's ghosthuntingtheories.com. I have 24 books. You can find all of those on Amazon. And I'm a screenwriter, so soon I'll be able to share with you some intriguing things I'm doing in that field of film industry.
Brilliant.
So definitely worth checking out, guys, and make sure that obviously you go and give Sharon a wee like on our page. But everyone have a good weekend and stay safe, and we will see you next week. Bye, everyone.